Discord. Let's talk a little bit about this Famatsu article. Yoshida does, he stated in the interview that he sees the gap between players and skill ranges and sees it as regrettable and wishes to narrow the gap with less reactionary choices. Now, this is an interesting statement there because I feel like they have made a lot of reactionary choices.
Absolutely.
That and again, going back to their previous statement about the difficulty of the creator section of Alexander, that are they actually listening? Do they really actually have a sense of that? Because I don't think that adjusting the difficulty down is necessarily the right move, and especially if you claim to be listening to that portion of your community and wanting to make less reactionary choices. That is one of the biggest reactionary choices that they've made.
Well, I mean, everything they've done recently has felt reactionary, so he's not wrong in saying that they've done that, but he just hasn't given us any indication that he plans on changing that approach anytime soon. I don't know at what point, I guess it's not technically reactionary to adjust the difficulty down because there's no reason to do it.
So what about? There is a big gap. I think that he has correctly identified.
Yes,
and we have talked about this as well. That there is a gap between players who log on, do their roulettes, and maybe do a Crystal Tower, or they'll do their Weeping City and Macaque. But that's really where their engagement with the game ends. And then you've got players like Nika who seek further engagement through raiding. And I feel like that he's trying to say that he wants to strike a balance between those two types of play, but I don't know that you can. I think that you just end up whittling the interest away on both ends.
And I'm not sure the difficulty is the reason for that.
Yes,
I'm not sure
agree.
The difficulty is why people aren't raiding.
I agree. I think it has way less to do with the difficulty and way more to do with the incentive. Yeah. We've had callers that have identified that. We've been talking about this for 6, 7, 8 months now. I mean, it really has. It comes down to the incentive structure that's not making a reward feel like a reward, and that I understand that feedback can be received as as very subjective, and also very sentiment driven, and I understand that, but that's really games, and specifically ongoing games, deal in that. That's the currency that your game needs to continue to be successful, especially if you're expecting your audience to pay month over month to have access to your product. If you want them to continue to pay month over month, then you've got to be meeting them with the quality of content that they expect. And I just don't think that we've been met with that this entire year. And that's disappointing. It's so disappointing for me as a player who absolutely loves this game, because I understand when people say, look, I've got to unsub after a month because, look, I've got other things that I want to do. I've got other things that I need to pay for and other stuff that I need to concentrate on. There's a part of me that wishes that the game pulled at you a little bit more than it does. And a lot of people identified that as negative qualities to MMOs maybe 10 years ago, and I think WoW did went to great lengths to strip a lot of that out. And it's going to be really interesting to see with this latest WoW expansion, the direction that they end up moving their community in. And the reason I say that is because WoW is really the only MMO that has the ability to innovate anymore, because they have the resources that they can lose. They can lose 1 million subs and be totally fine. It will not take the company under. If Final Fantasy XIV lost 2 million subs tomorrow, we would be looking at changing this game from a subscription model to a free-to-play model overnight. It would change. It would change the entire discussion surrounding this game. And again, people. I don't think people really stop and realize this or appreciate it if they do realize it, that this is one of the last MMOs that has a subscription charge along with it that you have to pay. WoW has a way where you can farm. If you're playing enough, you can basically play for free. Most other games have a either a pay-to-win model or some kind of really broken microtrans model, or they have jump potions or whatever. And we in the FF14 community, especially here on the show, have been a very active and vocal proponent against a lot of those ideas, because we've seen what they do in games like WoW. And if WoW is having such a huge fall off in the last 2 years, it's going to be really interesting to see what their strategy is to try to regain some of that focus and try to regain some of that hype and attention, because it sounds like a lot of people are in for Legion. A lot of people are going back for Legion. And a lot of
people close to us.
I don't even understand why. I don't even know what they're adding that is so compelling about this, but I'm going to be very interested to see, because I think this is going to be the bellwether for the future of MMOs. Just like WoW has led the charge in the last 10 years, it's going to continue to lead the charge until it loses that subscriber base, which I don't think is possible in this day and age.
So are you going to subscribe and play WoW?
Absolutely not.
Legion,
No,
just to see what they can do, Daddy?
No. Why are you calling me Daddy?
He's calling you Daddy.
I have my RP flag up.
God, I hate you. You know what? No. Here's the thing. If you want to have your RP flag up in the studio, you have to actually make a physical RP flag to hold above your head. No.
He's working on it.
No. Not a shitty one. Not a piece of notebook paper. This actually has to be an arts and crafts project from you.
Like a piece of felt.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do this in the time that it's going to take to wrap the show up.
Can I have a temporary one?
No.
I want a temporary one for right now. I'll arts and crafts the fuck out of my RP flag.
Okay, if you do that, I'll just mute your mic for the rest of the show. How about that?
Well, that's no fun.
Exactly. All right, it's one or the other. We've actually got content that this is why I'm so frustrated at your fucking sidetracking today, because we've got shit that we have to finish here on the outline, and only 30 minutes left in the show. We actually have stuff to talk about today. We don't have to meander around in the dumb shit that we normally do. And we have a goal. We have a goal. If we don't get through the end of this, I don't know what happens. I may murder you.
I'm sorry, Daddy.
Oh my God.
No more mic for you. God, use it responsibly, for Christ's sake. All right.
Choke me, Daddy.
God damn it. Thanks, Dirty Randy. All right. So Alexander Savage is being viewed as more difficult than was intended by the devs, and is looking to start following an easier format to find that sweet spot. Of course, this is what we talked about a whole lot earlier in the program. Nika, again, I've got to defer to you. This, in my opinion, this is just such a misguided move on Square Enix's part. What would you expect, or what would you want to see out of the final tier of Alexander?
Gosh, it's so hard to answer a question like that.
But if you're disappointed by this, if you're disappointed by this opinion, then what could he have said that would have encouraged you, or would have left you walking away from the quote a little bit more encouraged?
Man, I guess, gosh, it's difficult, because a lot of what we're saying is lacking is incentive, whether it's through gear or through story. And I feel like the last leg of a raid cycle is the wrong place to change that. So it's really difficult to think like all the things that I want them to change. I think they should start with 4.0. Honestly, like what I'm loving about Midas is the fact that even though we're only on A7 and we haven't even touched A8 yet, none of us are burnout. None of us hate it. The second this interview came out, my entire raid group is like, what the fuck, we're triggered. We hate this. Why is he saying this? Like, we are loving this raid tier. We're doing, we're having a good time doing it. What is he thinking by saying this? And
I think that's fair. That's a fair reaction.
I mean, whereas in Gordius by A3, we're like, this is the worst thing ever. What were they thinking? Were they high when they made this? We hate this. We quit. Our group's falling apart.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a very big difference between it. And like we were saying earlier, my only real, like, I just don't understand where he's getting this from.
Yeah.
If there are actually, what are the JP players saying? I don't know. Maybe even the JP players that are clearing it are saying it's too hard. I mean, Arthur is in the chat. I see him talking. I just don't. I don't know. Like, it's hard. I feel like that they should continue the next raid cycle around the same level as Midas, and then in 4.0 change it up somehow. Because, I mean, as much as I want them to change the incentive or change the story, although they said there's supposed to be more story in this tier, I don't know how much of that I can believe, that it has something to do with the time. But, I don't know. They should definitely change it for 4.0. But as of right now, I mean, I'm not a game developer, and I can't really decide what I would like to see changed, but I think that Midas is in a good enough spot that if the next raid tier was about the same as Midas, I would not complain. So I don't know who is complaining. If it gets too easy, like, I don't want to be, like, I'm not world first, and I would hate for me to all of a sudden be clearing all 4 levels within the first couple weeks, because if it's that easy, then it means that they've, like, I don't want to be farming, because I feel like if I'm already going to be on a level where I'm farming all 4 raids from, like, the first couple weeks, then I'm going to be way bored of it way earlier on and not log in even more, quickly.
And that's the question. What is sweet spot? What does that mean?
Yeah. And I feel like it would have been, if they had said they had found the sweet spot with Midas, I would have probably said, yeah, you might be onto something there. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they got way closer to having a properly tuned raid with Midas than they did with Gordius.
Yeah, I think so too. I think our group definitely took way longer than the average group on A6 due to lots of issues. But so I think that by average, we probably would be finishing A8 about right now or in the next week or two, which I think is good. You complete all 4 of them and have a few weeks to have all of them on farm before the next one comes out. That makes sense to me. I think that's good. I know with the coils, there were a couple of the rounds where we actually had them on farm for like a month or 2, and it got really boring really fast. So I think you need to kind of have that level where most of the mid-core players are beating it with just a few weeks, maybe a month to spare.
Then, I mean, if you're still struggling on A7 Savage and you weren't having those kinds of same struggles with Binding Coil, then, I mean, maybe it does need a bit of an adjustment to be easier.
I don't want it easier because I didn't like that.
Fair enough.
The fact that we cleared Binding Coil and then had it on, like, we would literally just log in on Tuesdays, clear all 4, log out for a week. Like, I don't want that.
Right.
I want to log in a couple times a week to do raiding, because then at least since I'm already logged in, I'll probably do roulettes and do other stuff as well. If I'm beating everything in one day, I'm not going to log on again, and that's lame. Yeah. I don't want it to be so easy that even the mid-core groups are beating it with no trouble. Yeah. No, that's a pretty good point. Let's go back to our phone lines real quick and talk to Logos Hugo of Ultros. What's up, Logos?
Hey, how's it going, y'all?
Good.
So kind of on the topic that you guys are talking about, I really feel like his direction and the way he answered that question is the final Alex is probably going to be easier due to the difficulty of the rotations. And then once next patch comes out, or next expansion comes out, that they're going to be tuning back the difficulty of the rotations, but increasing the difficulty of the actual raid.
That would be interesting because, every indication that we've gotten in terms of the development of the individual jobs is that as the level cap gets higher, that the rotations will become more and more complex. They haven't given us any indication that they want to try to shrink that down or make it less complex. I mean, and you think about the ways that they can do that. You're talking about, condensing abilities or, making skill trees and forcing players to choose which abilities they unlock, making binary choices, things like that. Those are ways that you can kind of do that, but I don't think that FF14's system is very well designed for something like that. If they were going to implement it, Logos, how would you see them implementing it?
Honestly, I feel like that they would probably tune back some of the the actual buffs and stuff, because that is something that he talked about, like with stance dancing and different stances and stuff.
So are you talking like the slashing debuff that warriors would give, or something like that?
Something like that, or maybe something with Black Mage where they have multiple buffs they have to hold. Just like tuning that down, or maybe extending it to where you don't have to watch it as much. WoW definitely did something very similar to that, where they messed with buff timers, made things also more available to see, I guess. They had things where like icons would pop up on your screen to tell you something was ready or available. I could see them doing that, or making it where they have different types of stacks of different things.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. It's possible. Again, I wonder how, because when we saw the jump from 50 to 60, we did know that rotation changes were coming.
Yeah.
And they did. I mean, they changed the nature of quite a few jobs. Bard being a huge one. Even Black Mage is another huge one that changes, almost the entire meta of it changes as you take it from 50 to 60. And I feel like that's the sort of things that they're going to be doing, especially if they're concentrating on raising the cap with every successive expansion. I don't think that it's unreasonable for us as an audience to expect them to have horizontal progression at this point. It may be something that we want and call for and remember fondly from other games, but I don't think that it's a fair expectation for us to have for FF14 as a game at this point, because the devs have proven again and again that they have no interest in horizontal progression, and that they're only going to be pursuing a vertical progression model. And that tells me that rotations are only going to get more complex as time goes on. I mean, we talked earlier, they're adding a new double hotbar method for controllers. That tells me things are just going to get more and more complex.
Convoluted.
Yeah.
Convoluted.
Exactly. Thanks for the call, Logos. We appreciate it. If you want to call Limit Break Radio, of course, Limit Break Radio on Skype, 810-515-8715, limitbreakradio.com/Discord. Man, they are racing them boats real hard
They
out
sure
there.
are.
God damn.
This is the first time I can hear them.
It's like louder than it was earlier,
Yeah,
and
I
I
think
don't
they're closer.
I don't understand
It's
why.
louder than yesterday was, too.
Yeah,
This is nuts.
sure is.
HQ boats.
Forgot you were on mute. If you want to call the show, Limit Break Radio on Skype, 810-515-8715, limitbreakradio.com/Discord. I don't know how much more room we're going to have for callers. We do want to get to the end of this Famatsu interview. Trying to find the sweet spot. Who knows what that really means? Some classes were made too difficult and complex, and the devs are looking to reduce the complexity by changing its at-level abilities. This is something that Logos was just talking about. But the thing is I don't see how that's possible unless they start adjusting the function of certain abilities or the way that certain abilities are unlocked or obtained. I feel like a skill tree is one way to sort of compensate for something like that, but it's not exactly the answer that FF14 needs, because I don't think that the system lends itself well to that. So.
The only thing I can see them doing is having moves that replace other moves. Once you get this, you no longer have this ability.
I could see that.
That's the only way I can see them doing it in this game.
Or a level 2 of it or something. But at that point, that's just, I don't know, man.
Or something like Ninja, where you get a move where it just refreshes your Huton automatically.
No, but the thing is that fucks things up when you go back to level sync, though. Like even now, like using certain moves on Scholar, like I'll put certain moves on my second hotbar, then I'm like, oh crap, well now that I'm level synced, I have to like flip back to it. I don't know. So I don't know if that would necessarily work, that one replaces another, because then, unless when you level sync, it just goes back to its original.
Yeah, well, I would assume so.
So Yoshida was also comparing the savage Japanese players to the sentiments of North American players, do the savage content out of more out of obligation than desire, and I feel like that's probably true of the Japanese community.
But do they feel like if they don't raid, then they're not experiencing the game, or?
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the North American community just sort of writes it off. I mean, that's not a sentiment that I recognize, which is why I say that it's probably a sentiment for the Japanese community.
It could be. I could definitely see like the mindset of like, this is the content they put in the game. We're supposed to do it.
Right.
Okay. Well,
isn't that kind of how? I mean, I don't play WoW, but I feel like most WoW players, like, there's not that many WoW players that don't do any raids, right?
I'm sure there's tons of people that don't do raids in WoW.
That don't do any raids? Oh.
Probably.
I just thought that was like the thing to do in WoW, and that once they put out a new raid, everybody does it. No?
Well, I'm sure
when
there's
I was
lots
playing
of raid
WoW, I didn't do very many raids.
I'm sure there's lots of people that just do the raid finder, but aside from like the actual challenging stuff, I'm sure they don't bother with it.
Right. Japanese players have a clear rate of content that's it's like 3 times higher than North American audiences. So, I mean, I think that alone says something right there that, North American players just don't feel like there's a real compelling reason to do this. I mean, we've been saying this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I read that as 3 times more JP players are trying than NA.
Yeah, but that's because they feel like if they don't raid, then they are left out of the game. Because I don't think any American players really think that at all. Like,
Not
that
at all.
if they don't raid, then they're left out. Because the raid is such a small percent of our community.
And again, the rewards only affect your ability to continue raiding. It doesn't impact at all your ability to do Crystal Tower. I mean, it does, but what does it do in the end? Like, what does it do for your party? It shaves a couple of minutes off of your total time. Nobody actually is watching that player and going, "Oh shit, look at the damage that they're rolling out." Like
in Dungeons, I noticed that. Though.
I don't.
Not so much in Crystal Tower.
I mean, but Nika, both of us are tanks, and so both of us have a way different situational battle awareness than other DPS players or even healers. Like, we have the ability to actually look and monitor what's happening on the battlefield more so than other players do. We have to dodge less, we have to rotate less. I mean, it really is a situation where we get to notice that stuff more.
I mean, I remember the first time I ran a fractal and that we were pushing phases and the bosses, I'm like, oh, hey, we didn't even get to that second thing. And
that's
everyone's gear, and I'm like, wow, all of us are at max gear. This is awesome. I hope I get a group like this again. Like, I definitely notice it in dungeons. Something like Crystal Towers and stuff, though, not so much.
But again, I mean, Nika, you had said last week that you do actually check other people, but then everyone else, all 4 people in this room, said that they stopped that practice completely after FF11, and I think that says something. And what it says is you're plugged into raiding, and so you're competitive with other raiders. That's why you bother to examine them. But because the rest of the community isn't engaged in that content, we don't even bother to check impressive raiders that walk by because we don't give a shit.
Actually, I do check people, but it's to look at their glamour.
But
I mean, that's part of the gear lust that we're talking about.
Wait, hang on. Is that only if you like their glamour to see what the pieces are, or is it every glamour?
Not every glamour, but if I like the piece, or if I like how
that
it
makes
looks,
sense.
Then I'll look at it.
That makes sense.
If it looks terrible, I'll look at it and say, wow, I need to get me some of this.
that makes a little bit of sense, but that's a function that's going on there.
If there's tits.
Have you ever paid attention to the stats?
No, never.
Yeah, see, exactly.
But see, I'm competitive with my glamour, so that's why I check people for it.
But again, I feel like that's the only reason people check anyone anymore. Like, there's no reason to check someone for gear stats unless you're noticing, like Nika had said, unless you're noticing that phase pushes are happening.
Well, even if I notice a phase,
if they have better gear than my tank does.
Even if I notice a phase push or something like that, I don't check the person. I just go, oh wow, we have sweet DPS. That's just what strikes in my mind.
I mean, as a tank, I always check the healer to see if they're geared enough for big pulls and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, as a healer, I will eye level check the tank. Say, oh shit, I'm in for some big pulls, or this guy doesn't have a good eye level. Maybe
he's good at big pull.
So
a huge eye level. I'm gonna have to heal bomb him a lot. Less DPS for me.
Well, and it seems
that's technical checking.
Wow.
Tactical checking.
Holy shit.
That was actually really hard.
Yeah, I noticed. So, I mean, with Yoshida preaching about raid content and, he mentions the joy of clearing challenging content with 7 others. But why then seek to dumb it down? Why then seek to lower the challenge there?
So
no, that makes no sense.
So more people can enjoy the challenge?
But we have story mode. We have story mode. That's the ubiquitous thing for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah.
But
And
nobody
when story
enjoys
mode-
that challenge.
When story mode first comes out, like the first week, it's not super easy. So I think like there's something to it. And then once you get your story and your weekly piece, who freaking cares, right? That's what they wanted with Coil. That's what everybody wanted with Coil, and they got it, and now people hate it. Come on now.
Well, and that,
That's because people
part of it.
complain about stuff they don't understand.
Part of it is that the story just sucks.
Yeah,
Story
that doesn't help.
Story for Alexander sucks, and the story for Coil was actually decent.
But
you're right.
I still feel like though that if there was no normal mode and the only way to get story was through Alex, I think a few more people would definitely do it.
Oh yeah.
Although I do realize that there's not really story in between the different turns like
Yeah.
there was last time. Like it's only at the completion of the 4th, which is why I feel like there's even not even that the story is worse, but that there's less of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. It does.
That scene was like after you beat 12.
Yeah, no, you're totally
Like,
right.
that was a really epic one.
You're totally right. Well, and remember that, at the time Yoshida had stated that, the rest of the team or the company might be kind of pissed about how much they spent to be able to make that cutscene. I mean, they really did go out of their way, and that was putting a bow on 1.0, which I get. I understood that, and I understand why that would be a lot more epic and a little bit more engaging, but the fact that it's so bad with Alexander that nobody gives a shit. Can anyone name the NPC from that? The Aura NPC? What's her name?
Louis Fox?
No, what's her name? The from the
Aura
Alexander.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
No one knows.
Yugiri?
No. There isn't. That's not her.
Female aura with silver metallic glamour.
Scarface?
Yeah, I think
What's
that's.
the name of the Aura chick in the Alexander story?
Hover Nyan.
Do you know?
No one
You
knows.
don't know either. Nobody knows.
No one
chat-
knows.
the chat knows.
Widget
No,
Banks?
of course the chat's going to know because they have Google.
Me Day, I remember.
You didn't remember. You saw the chat.
Yeah, you
No, that's what I'm
Googled.
saying. Now that they say it, no, they're saying now that they say it, I do remember. But
Oh, but yeah, just for the minute that we threw it around the room and no
I
one
never
could
would've
recall,
known.
that
Yeah.
doesn't speak volumes for how engaging that story is.
The mongrel.
Stop. Mentions Scholar and Warrior and their utility as being viewed as outrageous in terms of balance,
Outrageous.
which is really interesting because Yoshida in 3.1 had said that Warrior was working as intended. So which is it? Like,
Is that a mea culpa? Is that him saying, I was wrong?
it doesn't sound like it.
Uh,
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, first of all, outrageous is a very...
That's a strong word.
That's a strong word,
know,
especially
when
from someone like Yoshida.
compare Warriors DPS to Dark Knights and Paladins. It is outrageously stronger, I think,
I'm not
in terms
sa-
of balance.
Never said he was wrong. I never said that that's incorrect. I'm saying that it's very interesting that this is it's not like a backpedaling, but an admission, that maybe he was wrong, or that something does actually need to happen there. But viewing Scholar and Warrior's utility as outrageous, I mean, again, that's very, very strong language to use associated with those job adjustments, and I have to be wondering how Scholars and Warriors are feeling about this statement. Probably not fantastic.
I would
Is
say
he
nervous.
saying that he wants to nerf them, or does he want to bring the other?
That's what
up
it
to
sounds
par?
like. No.
Maybe he wants to bring the other two of each up to par.
I don't think that's what it sounds like.
Because if he said that Warrior is intended to be the way that it is way back in the day, maybe just Dark Knight and Paladin and Astrologian and White Mage are slacking and they're going to buff them.
The term outrageous leads me to believe nerf. If it was the other way around, I feel like he would say the other two jobs aren't up to par.
Yeah.
Like the way that's what it says to me says nerf.
Yep, singling those two jobs out to me implies that there is an incoming nerf. So that's probably pretty disappointing for Scholars and Warriors. But you know what, Warriors? It's hard for me to feel bad for you because you have been rubbing that swollen red dick in our face for so long. I get it. All right, I get it. Yeah, you can pump out pretty decent DPS. That's cool, bro. But like the amount of just penis swelling that would happen at the mere mention of Dark versus Warrior. Like, I'm not sad for you that you're getting nerfs, dummy.
I don't know. I'm actually surprised that he would say this now. Like, when they changed the vitality, the way the vitality worked, and that brought Paladin's DPS up and Warriors down a little bit, I thought that balanced it kind of a lot. Like, so that it wouldn't be outrageous anymore.
But again, is Warrior's utility as a DPS, unquestionable? Yes, it is. And I mean, should it be in a way? Yeah, I mean, yeah, they should be able to contribute to DPS, and they probably should top the DPS charts, but they should not be doing almost twice the amount of damage that other tanks are doing. That to me seems like a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So to me, I think that that's a necessary change, and it sounds like that's going to be happening. Stats and substats are going to be changed in 4.0 as well. It's kind of vague.
Yeah, they don't say very much about what.
That's vague, but that's big. I mean, stats and
it could
stuff.
be small. It could just be altering the parry rate slightly.
But they're saying stats and substats.
Yeah.
That to me speaks of a more, back end systemic change.
I'm hoping they either completely eliminate attribute points or make it so that you can actually pick more than just the one main attribute point.
Yeah, attribute points feel so pointless.
They're so tacked on. I mean, that's just kind of a bring over from the original class system. I feel like either they need to make it so that we can pick multiple things and spec differently and play differently, or just eliminate them altogether.
That's what materia is for, specking differently.
Right. I don't think we need the attributes at all.
Yeah,
Well, but again,
The attribute points,
but there's no point to specking differently. Like, there's actually,
there isn't.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm hoping will maybe by changing stats and substats will make there be a point.
It's an active detriment if you spec if you spec differently. So
Yep.
I agree with you, Nika. I think that would be a nice change to see. But again, without having a systemic change, like what do you do?
Like, let's say, for example, you can't change your attribute. You can't add attributes to your main stats. So, Dex for Ninja, Strength for Warrior. Vitality for Warrior. What are you going to put all your stats into? Into Vitality or Strength for Warrior.
Exactly.
That's literally the only other stat that will help you. As whatever your job is.
Yeah.
Well, I think what would be nice is if Paladin could put something into Mind or Piety and actually make their MP matter. Like, Paladins, that cure has always been a part of FF. Not so much in this.
I don't disagree with you there, Nika.
We got clemency.
It would.
Yeah, but
I think if there was a bonus to specking outside the norm, right? Like, you've got, of course, crit rate and debt, like those are, as a tank, like that's what you want to be focusing on, right? But if you got a bonus to parry, like, if you melded parry and you got a bonus on top of what the stats already provide you, then that may be enough of an incentive to spec differently. But it's another systemic change that's got to come from Square Enix. And I just feel like, they say, like, we're trying to make these changes to make the game more dynamic, and then every change that they makes it more, it makes it more linear, makes it more binary,
homogenized.
Makes it more homogenized, exactly. And that's the thing that I think concerns me the most about FF14. I think that Square Enix has really got to shift the focus from bringing new people in and trying to bring people in from WoW or Guild Wars and finding things that are recognizable to them, and concentrate on what your community wants, what they've been asking for, and the styles of play that they have also been requesting. It does nobody any good to continually compare yourself up against a game that we have clearly identified earlier in the show doesn't have to play by any rules, because they've got the resources to not have to give a shit WoW could come out and release the worst content and still retain 7 million players. I'm pretty sure that was Warlords of Draenor.
Warlords of Draenor. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, really, that's what that whole expansion said. You can release the worst stuff and still maintain 7 million players. And if you can do that, then you can do anything moving forward. And I hate that I'm looking at Blizzard for the future of MMOs as opposed to anyone else, because Blizzard put us into this rut in the first place. And I feel like looking to them to take us out in the future is just... I mean, it may be folly. That may be deep folly. But who else is in that position? Clearly, games like WildStar, or games that try to innovate in this way, like FF14 1.0 did, they fail, and they fail again and again and again, and then they don't have the economic resources to be able to either correct the course or fix the product. Fortunately, Square Enix did, right? But now what? Now what happens? And I hate that I'm looking to Blizzard for the future.
It feels like the episode of any like action cartoon as a kid where the hero has to team up with the villain until the end of the episode, but he's just going to betray you at the end.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it feels like.